What do you need to know to celebrate Bealtaine properly? Well, Dagdi Bogus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. John O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And we are at that season, but it is a season that comes around, of course, every single year. And it is the Middle Fire Festival of the four kind of acknowledged fire festivals of Ireland's ancient seasonal practices. So the first is like Imbolc, which starts in spring. Then, of course, we are at Bealtaine, which is now the beginning of summer. We then have Lunasa, which is in autumn, and of course Samhain, which is the end of the year, which is in the end of autumn towards the beginning of winter. Really, is the acknowledgement at that point. Um, so Bealtaine, there is a lot of acknowledgement around Bealtaine, a lot of energy around Bealtaine, but there's also a lot of confusion around Bealtaine. People not being aware that, for example, they're pronouncing it wrong. It is pronounced Bealtaine, and the translations of that is well, there's multiple different words, as with all of the Irish language, and especially the older Irish language. There are multiple different meanings, but really what it comes down to is kind of incandescent fire or enlightening brightness, Tina being the Irish word for fire. In fact, the word for May, the month of May, Oscuelga in Irish, is still Bealtaine. So anyone who's saying it's Beltane or anything like that at all is mispronouncing an Irish word and probably having learned it from an appropriated tradition of some sort. It's again not their fault. It's probably what they were exposed to at the time, but it does kind of it's important to go back to the roots, and that's what we teach here at the Irish Pagan School is acknowledging and knowing where the information comes from so that we can be discerning as we approach our connection with our spirituality and our growth. So, speaking of growth, Bealtaine is a time of the explosive energy of growth. So, what happens in springtime with Imbolc is like the sowing, the clearing, the setting everything right so you can begin and grow your year in the right direction. Bealtaine is when things kick off with the big energy, big push as we move into the seasonal kind of warm period within Ireland. And that's really the acknowledgement of what Bealtaine is. It's not a particular calendar date. It's not you have to celebrate at this particular time. It is about that environmental shift, and that's how it was acknowledged and that's how it was observed. And so as we springtime began to end and we're moving into the warm days of summer, that's when there would be the celebrations of Bealtaine. Now, there's a lot of practices around Bealtaine. There's a lot of things that were done, even divinatory practices to understand about life and death. What is most commonly accepted to do at the moment is to celebrate Bealtaine from sunset on the 31st of April until on the noon on the 1st of May. And that is kind of the acknowledgement window for that transition or transfer. Now, again, that's going to be slightly different in different environmental areas. Like we are talking about an Irish kind of centric belief based on the Irish kind of environmental shifts. And in the ancient times, there was only actually two cycles. I learned this from my partner Laura, and there was Salv and Galv, which was kind of growing cycle and winter cycle. But then as the environment began to change post Ice Age, we began to have four very clear seasonal kind of boundaries within Ireland, and that's when the rest of it began to grow through. Now, uh, people do get stuck on like the when and like is it here, is it there, is it this particular day, is it that particular day, and we have to acknowledge the fact, folks, that like the calendar has changed. The practices for Bealtaine have been practiced for thousands of years, but the calendar as we understand it and time as we understand it has been iterated and altered through time. So sometimes we need to kind of acknowledge the fact that time is a construct to a certain degree. Now, don't get me started on that. I could do a whole different ramble on that. But the expression of the seasonal cycles is what's actually more important here. And so as we begin to kind of shift into the beginning of May, we're beginning to shift into like the warmer weather, the longer days, and that's when everything kind of growing thing kicks it up to the next notch. Anything that was birthed or conceived at the start of the springtime, is beginning to grow and to kind of fulfill its life kind of cycle. And so that's a big, big part of what goes on. It is a time for abundance. Like it really, really is a time for like, all of that large, explosive kind of full on energy. And it does mean that with all of that energy going on, there's a lot of kind of tricky elements that go along with it. And so it's important to be aware of your energy, to be aware of your time energy, your financial energy, your, physical energy, your emotional energy, because this is when, you know, generally speaking, and as someone who suffers from seasonal affective disorder, when it is dark days, I do have to use a lamp to help me at times. These days, when it's brighter, I don't. But the idea that the emotional energy and the mental energy is something that we all kind of have, and that, brighter, longer days, we tend to feel a little bit more upbeat, tend to feel a little more energized. It's important to be aware consciously of your energy and its expenditure at this particular time of the year, at the shift around Bealtaine, because especially in the folk traditions, it's possible to take or steal someone's abundance or like forthcoming wealth. And it was a common enough practice in Ireland days. Like, you would have cursings that would happen around, boundaries between one person's land and another person's land. And not like cursing as in fuck you forever, I hate you to die. It's more like, well, may the wealth flow towards me, really, or may the abundance or the energy flow towards me. And that's the intent really around it. So as the things begin to shift around Bealtaine, there is that kind of awareness you need to make about clearing and being conscious of your boundaries. What is your protected space? What is your energy areas? What is the things you need to focus on so that you can have the best harvest you can have once we get to Lunasa? And with this time of large energy, large kind of growth, that's really what the focus needs to be on, like protecting and taking care of the things that are your abundance and your energy for how you're going to reap your harvests and rewards later on in the year. So there's a lot of information available on Bealtaine. We have classes on it at the Irish Pagan School, but we also have a very, very handy thing, pretty much a cheat sheet to know everything you need to know, including some of the divinatory practices, including some kind of practical things you might want to consider doing throughout the month of May. Now, I couldn't give this away before noon on the 1st of May because I'm recording this in the afternoon of May, because you don't give away things before like that shift in the cycle. You need to be conscious and like take care of what is yours, look to what is yours. But now that we are afternoon, we're into the season of May as it extends the Bealtaine kind of period. We're giving this away. We're giving away this content. So all you got to do is go to irishpagan.school/Bealtaine cheat sheet. I'll put a link down below for you. You can sign up onto the mailing list. We have classes available there as well. But getting the cheat sheet is something you can download and actually get into details, which will inform your practices if you choose it to do so. You don't have to have it inform your practices, but as I said, we're an educational body and we want people to know where this information comes from. What are the original kind of contents? We get asked, actually, there was a recent question about like what's our stance on the use of Bealtaine as part of the Wiccan secret cycles. It is about understanding that Alexandrian Wiccan and Gardnerian Wiccan come from a particular type of constructed spiritual path, and some of the aspects and elements of that constructed spiritual path, though taking the words from older kind of practices, may not actually be about older practices. Some of the aspects of that kind of structure are appropriated and taken from other cultures, and the only way you're going to be able to stand over your practices ethically is if you're aware of that. So it's not for me to judge or to tell you like, yes, no, etc., blah, blah, blah. All I can do is say, here, be a bit discerning, look where the original information comes from, and explore like the roots of what you are growing. And that's what we kind of educate people on in the Irish Pagan School. It is understand the root information, understand the actual core structure wherever we can, and then grow it forward as ethically and within your principles as you can. Now, no one's perfect. It's not going to be always, I don't know everything about everything, and I will never claim to do so. But what I will do, and this is one of my favorite quotes actually, it's Maya Angelou, do the best you can. And when you know better, just do better. And so that's where I would like to leave it for you there today. As I said, go to irishpagan.school/Bealtaine cheat sheet. I will put the link below and in the information wherever you're kind of experiencing this content. And that means hopefully you can pick up and be more informed for yourself going forward into this season and into next year's. Until next time, look after yourself. Take care. Agus Lán. Goodbye.